Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Well, that was abrupt. There was no dissolve in there. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers, and I am Viceroy of Verisimilitude, totally off because I realized that some of my, anyway, Archbishop of Banterbury, Chancellor of Cheerfulness, and even though I said it, look at that, no more dissolves. Apparently something went a little wacky with my settings here today, so you're going to have to watch, I guess, abrupt camera angles. So I apologize for that. It happens sometimes. Yes, your existential Mr. Rogers, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, you're with me here in the Robservatory. Coming at you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations episode number 470. My God, 470. By the way, I have a special treat today. Not for you. For me. I have some Nagori sake. I already shook it up. I'm going to have some. Look, here it is. I'm going to pour it up for me. I got it last night and specifically saved this so I could have some today. I've never had sake on this show before, but kampai. There you go. It's silky smooth. Nagori sake is unfiltered sake. And it's cold, and I love it. It's so good. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I have a lot. Gentle people, kind beings from across the 28 known galaxies. However you identify, you're all welcome here. And again, with all of this craziness, with America, apparently, we just don't care anymore. Raging pandemic, but, you know, now I know somebody very personal to me who is actually in the hospital in Florida. Alvin Enton, this one goes out to you. Feel better. He has double pneumonia, and he is positive for COVID-19. Hopefully, he'll be pulling through quickly and will get out of the hospital. He's one of my favorite dads I've ever met. Love the guy. Love his kids. Love his family. Love his wife, Lois. So, Alvin Enton, feel better. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would love to, I'm going to see if I can change, let's see if it's a smooth, hang on, let's try this. Do you think will this fix things? Look at that. Isn't that better? I mean, don't you like that? It's much better than just the hard cuts. Anyway, so today, there is an article about No Time to Die. And everyone knows, or maybe you don't know, that No Time to Die was the first big film to move off its original. It was supposed to open in early April. April 2nd in the UK, and then April 10th in the United States, if memory serves. And it was the first big film to move off of its release date. And look, this made me sad. Obviously, as a James Bond fan my whole life, I really wanted to see No Time to Die. And it's frustrating. The problem is, as many people know, I've said this before on the show a lot. Let me switch cameras. This is more of an introductory camera. This is my master shot. Let's move into coverage. So the idea with movies, large movies, and I've said this on the show so many times, that a motion picture is not made by a studio with their own money. Studios don't have like vaults of cash. They certainly don't have vaults of cash to make $250 million movies. No Time to Die is a $250 million movie. Tenet is a $250 million movie. And that's just the production budget. The reason why studios don't have that much liquid cash on hand is because they're spending money on their operating expenses. And it's always rolling over. The thing about movie making that people don't really get is you can't make money, or you can't make movies on credit. The days, maybe if you're making a $30,000 movie and you've taken out a bunch of credit cards to pay for it, you could do it that way. But movie making is we are burning liquid cash business. So you're paying salaries, you're renting equipment, you're buying food for people. It's you are burning liquid cash, so you can't really do it on credit. So when you're making a $250 million movie, which could take, 150 days, depending, the studios, what they do is they borrow money from a bank. and they borrow money from a bank at a certain rate of interest, and they understand that, okay, the production time of this film is a year and a half or 2 years, and they know that when the film is released, again, I don't know the exact economics behind it. I don't know, like, when do they make those interest payments? Maybe they're paying them off as they go. I really don't know. But the fact is they're borrowing money and they're incurring interest payments. So when you have a $250 million investment and it is not coming out during the projected time, that means those interest payments, they're either being paid back by somebody else, like another movie, for instance. But now with everything shutting down, the cash flow for studios is disrupted. So that's going to cost somebody money down the line, and it's going to be the studio. So delaying large movies that had large budgets is not great for anyone. Already the business is disrupted, but then to have, incurring even more dollars in interest payments is problematic. And you're then borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. It's not good for anyone. So the idea that they've already pushed No Time to Die, a $250 million movie, they've moved it from April to November already. That's a long time. That's a significant delay. But another thing that people need to understand is when a movie that costs $250 million is released, it's $1 billion before they're going to really hit break even. Some people will tell you 800 million, but it's $1 billion. They expect No Time to Die to be $1 billion grossing film. And the reason that they can expect that is because they've seen how the 4 previous Daniel Craig movies have performed on at the worldwide box office. Obviously, Skyfall performed the best, but still, they've done well. Quantum of Solace, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, Skyfall, and then Spectre. So this movie, being that it's the last Daniel Craig film, and they've got a Billie Eilish song, it's a movie that they're expecting to make $1 billion. But the thing is, they can't make $1 billion with theaters closed. They need all of the worldwide theaters open. And we talked about it on the John Campea show this morning. I was suggesting that, America, we're now back into a COVID nightmare because we were not, unfortunately, we dropped the ball. I think not having any federal leadership at the top. I mean, now the White House has diverted information from the CDC. They don't even want people to know what the daily numbers are. So the CDC is not getting, the Center for Disease Control is not getting hospital information updated on a daily basis anymore. It's going to the White House first because everybody in the White House certainly knows how to manage a global pandemic. But anyway, with the way the United States is going, we can't have our theaters open, or at least some of our theaters are going to be closed. Certainly, I'm expecting a full lockdown to be announced in Los Angeles, actually in California at any moment. So the problem is, even if they were to release No Time to Die, there's not enough theaters open to get the kind of money out of the box office that they need to make sure that they're maximizing their dollar gross so they can pay back the interest payments and make some money. So to release a $250 million movie in this current climate. Now, I know other places, people are getting back to work, production work all over the world, New Zealand, England. There's places that people are actually getting back to the business of shooting movies. Not here in the United States, they're not. But, things will change. But they need those theaters open. Now, while they have not delayed Tenet and No Time to Die off of their current new dates. Tenet is in August, and obviously No Time to Die is in November. I would expect both of those movies to be pushed. When? It's hard to say, but there is an article, and people have been reporting it, but it appears to be the article came from a very reputable site, mi6-hq.com. A very reputable James Bond site and movie site, and they have an article here that was published on the 16th. Hurry up and wait. In the run-up to cameras eventually rolling on the 25th film No Time to Die, Daniel Craig told reporters that there were still some things he wanted to do with James Bond. With multiple nods to the 1980s period of 007 in the new film, one of the unexpected homages of that era of Bond adventures could now be a summer release. When Roger Moore was launched as the new James Bond in Live and Let Die just 18 months after Sean Connery bowed out in Diamonds Are Forever, the release schedule for 007 outings shifted to become a regular fixture at the summer box office. All but one film, Live and Let Die to License to Kill, opened in the summer. The one time they tried going back to winter for The Man with the Golden Gun chopped the box office admissions in half. It's easy to see why United Artists kept the summer months given such predictable success. Toward the end of that era, as the 1980s came to a close, Bond started to face summer box office competition from other blockbuster franchises, and takings dwindled. Well, there was no James Bond movie between 1989 and 1995 because of the Kevin McClory ridiculousness. Since then, a new generation of Bond fans, or perhaps two generations of Bond fans, have only experienced the opposite. Ever since the long 6-year hiatus from 1989, every film from GoldenEye through Spectre, all the Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig films have debuted what American trailers often call the holiday season, in November and December. In the past couple of decades, this has been a less congested part of the annual box office calendar compared to the summer, which is now awash with big-budget action outings, comic book movies, and Hollywood franchises. Bond films over the past 25 years have enjoyed, for the most part, uncontested release windows in the winter, one notable exception being Titanic in 1997. That was when Tomorrow Never Dies came out. It's hard to imagine that MGM would want to stray from this strategy and risk going back to a summer release. But here we are in 2020, and the playbook is in tatters. With the coronavirus pandemic expanding in North America and major states such as California going back into lockdown, the delayed release date of No Time to Die to November 20th, 2020 is now looking very uncertain. Market analysts who care more about stock performance than film fan wishes are also projecting that it is unlikely cinemas will reopen for the rest of 2020. A go, no-go decision will be due soon, as the start of a 90-day marketing ramp would be imminent. Having already lost $30 million on marketing No Time to Die for its ill-fated April 2020 release, MGM and Universal are unlikely to want to speculatively spend publicity funds only to have to push the movie during, again, an active campaign. Whilst United Artists releasing, co-owned by MGM, are handling the North American distribution for No Time to Die, Universal is handling the rest of the world, which should account for approximately 75% of the global box office. The Bond films are heavily weighted in terms of their box office to foreign performance. Universal currently has Fast and Furious 9 scheduled for April 2021 after being delayed a year, and Jurassic World Dominion penciled in for June 2021, a potential clash for Bond. However, the latest entry in the dinosaur franchise had to abort production in March after only a couple of weeks of filming. Principal photography is now resumed again at Pinewood under stringent safety guidelines. It should be mentioned that apparently No Time to Die also did a few brief reshoots, I guess for 2 scenes, at Pinewood, I think. The hiatus in production has not yet led to a formal release date delay, but such a push to late 2021 would then open up Universal's June 11th, 2021 window for No Time to Die. The only competitive film currently scheduled for June 2021 is Venom, Let There Be Carnage from Columbia Pictures and Marvel, coincidentally also starring Naomi Harris. Although no timetable for an announcement has been signed off, a further delay to summer 2021 is expected soon. Brace yourself. Note: to put to rest some often reported misconceptions and rumors, neither Eon, MGM, or Universal are considering a premium VOD streaming option for No Time to Die. It will open in cinemas even if it takes another year or longer. B25 Limited, the shell company operated by Eon Productions for the purposes of making the film, has been paid back the $199 million that it cost to produce. Wow. Unlike a lot of other studio pictures, there is no ticking clock on debt, and therefore no rush to release a film in less than an optimal marketplace. The film is also locked and not open to tweaking, re-edits, or reshoots. Wow. It is a finished product sitting on a shelf waiting for release. Any speculation to the contrary is false. That's interesting. I mean, I would imagine that, one of my heroes in life is Barbara Broccoli. because her job in life is to make James Bond movies, and it's been the family business. Who doesn't love that? That's amazing. It's interesting then to know that there you go. No Time to Die's production budget has been paid back entirely. That was probably something that was done once the film was delayed. What a smart move. I don't think the studio did that. I'll bet Barbara Broccoli herself probably arranged for that to happen. So now there is no ticking clock in terms of No Time to Die sitting on a shelf. They can put it out whenever they want. There's no debt accumulating. I wonder if other studios would do that as well. It would behoove them to do so. You just have to have some deep pockets. Unless it was your own money. That's why I would assume Barbara Broccoli, who's probably rich beyond the dreams of avarice, was able to just write that check and pay back the production fees. Because why wouldn't you? That was very, very, very smart. Good for her. Let's cheers to Barbara Broccoli. Because why not? So, well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That, again, from mi6-hq.com. A favorite site of mine. I go to it a lot. So anyway, we'll see where that all goes. It's nice to know then that they are not worried about their release date. That's really the thing that I worry about is that debt, because if you having to pay that debt back, well, now they don't, so it makes things much easier on the filmmakers and on the studio. So that's good. So I think that's a pretty good speculation. We'd see No Time to Die moving into that Jurassic World Dominion date. That would not surprise me in the least. I think that would be a smart move because right now things are too iffy. They're too up in the air. Little craziness. So I'm going to jump right into letters today, ladies and gentlemen. I have nothing more to discuss, just that. Ian Samuels is here. Ian Samuels says, Rob and fellow Robservationists, one of the most entertaining programs I used to watch when I was younger was As Seen on TV, first presented by Australian Clive James and later by Chris Tarrant. One of my favorite regular pieces was the Japanese game show Endurance. Also, there were adverts from around the world, so some of these were due to the name of a product being strange to us in the US or the UK. So I decided, just as a bit of fun, to present some real products from around the world. A particularly famous one was lemonade from Spain, which was called Piss Off. So how about some Macedonian Virginia beer, some crisps or chips in the US from Finland called Mega Pussy. You could dip them in some Romanian spicy dip called semen dip. How about a Chinese version of pepperami? Pepperami? That's what he wrote, pepperami, called homo sausage, served with Mexican pepper sauce, shito. Wash it down with some Korean water, either bottled, called pet sweat, of can, called the Jew's ear juice. Well, I don't know what to say about all that. Japanese ramen-flavored soup for sluts, or an Argentinian burger called barfi, washed down with Ghanaian. Ghana, if it's something from Ghana, it's Ghanaian. That's kind of cool. Ghanaian cola, pea cola, or with some Turkish tea called urinal. It's very interesting how names can mean very different things in different parts of the world. Hopefully, a bit of fun. Ian, I think they knew what they were doing. They were taking the piss. Anyway, that's what it seems to be from my perspective. But thanks for that. Emil Johansson is here. Emil Johansson has written a letter again. Rob, I wanted to write about my own life. I want to write about why I want to work in the video game industry in the hopefully near future. I don't feel like working for the fanciest company because I probably wouldn't survive the pressure. However, I would love to do indie games, smaller stories, and build something up from there. I have a lot of ideas, what would be cool to do, but of course, as they say, game design is not about having ideas, it's more about problem solving, which makes sense. And you can have ideas, but I guess in a sad, more real world, those with actual skills get to do the good stuff. I know most of the discussions on YouTube I take part in is about movies. I don't know why I'm not drawn to more game-oriented discussions on a daily basis. I've barely played anything since I started studying, which was 2 years ago, sort of now. When I was 15, I wanted to work with movies as a director. That was the dream I barely dared to fantasize about. Well, that didn't happen. When I was 20, I thought about what I wanted to do again, and I was leaning toward games. I'm fascinated with how you can create entire worlds as simulations to tell narratives that people come up with. I grew up playing games, of course. The industry has obviously changed a lot given the last decades. I remember playing Final Fantasy X and wanting to make a trilogy of movies based on the story. Now I want to declare what I think is interesting about games and why I think games are worth working with and it deserves attention. The first point I want to make is that games, unlike other mediums like books or movies, has an element of challenge in them. The story doesn't necessarily move forward unless you hit the right buttons, which can be frustrating. I've recently been playing some... Pardon me. I've recently played some Super Mario, the first one without being able to save anything, and I didn't get very far, and I rage quit, because basically every time... But I think this element of a challenge is a good thing. When watching a movie, you don't have to do anything. The story plays by itself. Perhaps that's what's leading people to believe the good guys always win, because we are fed that regardless of our own input. The second point I want to make is that games can consume a lot more time than movies. One could argue that both an element of challenge and time-consuming factors is a negative thing. I'm not too big on esports personally or spending countless hours in a World of Warcraft, but I'm going to focus on what I think are positive aspects. A movie, with all the effort put into it, is usually maybe 2.5 hours, tops, while games like Final Fantasy can take up to 60 hours just to complete the story. This is an opportunity, I think, to go deeper into the lore in ways other forms of storytelling might not be able to do. A TV series with 1 million characters in it can lose focus on who's the lead, if there even is one. A movie with multiple villains can feel convoluted, but a game that takes its time to immerse you into a world where there are so many different characters and worlds to explore is truly amazing, in my opinion. Overall, I think video games have a lot of untapped potential, adapting popular lore or just telling good stories. It's not all about the best graphics or following trends like movies. I hope I can contribute to the industry because I really think games can take attention away from big Hollywood movies even when done right. Sorry for the long letter, but I didn't do it just to be a message. Live long and prosper. Well, Emil, I think you're right. Look, there is no doubt that video games have become a potent, if not more potent force in terms of entertainment than even movies are. They can make a lot more money. I mean, sure, it might take a long time and they have to spend a lot of money to make a video game, but at $50 a pop, look at those first day grosses for some of those movies. I mean, you have video games that are grossing $1 billion. Look at Grand Theft Auto 5. It stayed alive online. They keep adding to it. It's a huge earner on a yearly basis. It keeps earning money. Movies earn out and then they're done. I mean, they have ancillary life to them, but a video game like a Grand Theft Auto or World of Warcraft, I mean, World of Warcraft, how many decades is that now? What, 2 decades we're in? It's been making a lot of money for a long period of time. And Minecraft, Fortnite, absolutely. I mean, video games are as potent a force, dare I would say more potent. When I was a kid, video games were always cool, but we didn't have the sophistication. I remember, I think it was the Intellivision that was the first 8-bit system. And I remember, to me, Intellivision was leaps beyond Atari 2600. And I loved my Intellivision. And we played them forever. But now, the sophistication of video games, it's like playing a movie. And look, I would suggest taking courses if you're not already. Game design's a big deal now. There's a lot of different, it's very interdisciplinary. You have to know storytelling and you have to know, well, I guess programming and coding. I think working in video games, I'd love to work in video games. I think it's amazing. I've just never, that's an area of entertainment I have not tried jumping into. I wouldn't mind doing it though. I think it'd be a lot of fun. So, yeah, I think you should do it. Make it happen. Flash dance that up, son. Take your passion and make it happen. Kyle A. is here. Dear RMB, I'm writing this letter on the 20th anniversary of Fox. I hope you... 20th... oh my God. Let me start this again. Dear RMB, I'm writing this letter on the 20th anniversary Fox. In parentheses, I hope you got that terrible joke. That is a terrible joke. Kyle A., you, sir, should be ashamed of yourself. Of X-Men. First, I will explain my history with X-Men. When I was little, they were my least favorite superheroes. I hated Wolverine. I had a bunch of Marvel bath toys, and his would be my least favorite. I thought he was a jerk and really didn't care for the claws. I watched the first X-Men movie when I was like 8 and thought it was good. Sadly, I couldn't find X2 on VHS, so I didn't click with the franchise. Then years later, I watched First Class, and it became one of my favorite comic book movies. I went back and watched the rest of the films. Rewatching the original X-Men 20 years later was a strange experience. On the one hand, it's cool to see a film reliant more on the characters than the special effects. On the other hand, after seeing Endgame, X-Men feels like a soap opera from the 80s. It's a little slow, and at times it feels like it takes itself a bit too seriously. Something that bugged me upon rewatch was the fact that Rogue came up with her own nickname. In fact, the names of all the X-Men characters in the film make absolutely no sense. At the time, Rogue has no idea that the X-Men exists, yet she calls herself Rogue. Later in the film, Professor X tells Logan that the names of the other team members. What gives, Rob? The X-Men suits in the film don't really pop, in my opinion. They have names like Storm and Cyclops, yet they're dressed like serious special ops officers. I remember it was a trend with films in the early 2000s to give them a very dark costume. Just look at the suits in G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. Today we have costumes like the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy that are very striking and faithful to the comic books. Back in the day, it was harder to show yellow spandex and not laugh. Then there are scenes in the X-Men that are truly special. The opening Holocaust scene sets the bleak tone of the film, but also the theme that there will always be a force strong enough to stand up against evil. It is having Eric separated from his family that reflects upon the idea that we are much stronger together than apart, and later kinship formed by the X-Men. Wolverine tries to leave the team, but must work together with Cyclops in order to save Rogue. It's very interesting to see the differences in the heroes and the Brotherhood, whereas the X-Men encourage each other. Sabretooth is consistently bullied and punished by Magneto and Toad. X-Men is one of the rare superhero films where the theme that we associate these characters with is not introduced. The main theme, composed by John Ottman, would be introduced in X2 and reappear in Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. The score by Michael Kamen is good, but feels forgotten in terms of the great superhero scores. My favorite part about X-Men is the relationship between Wolverine and Rogue, and I actually see it as a parallel to his relationship with X-23 and Logan. He begins and ends his story helping a little girl with powers. They are given powers that almost reflect each other, too. Logan can live for centuries, while Rogue can take away one's life in a matter of minutes through touch. Storm, Jean, Cyclops, and the Brotherhood are not really given much character to work with. It's the first film, after all, but the film succeeds with Logan, Rogue, Charles, and Eric at the end of the day. Senator Kelly is also a fascinating character, as such a horrific end. I don't feel like Disney would be willing to have a character die like he does. 20 years later, X-Men is still a pleasure to watch. It has its issues, but who cares? People still love it, and that's what matters. Thanks for reading this letter. Sincerely, Kyle A. Well, Kyle, I agree with you. I have to tell you, when I was doing, obviously, people know that I produced the special features for the DVD, now Blu-rays, of both X-Men, which is now X-Men. Well, it was X-Men 1.5 now. It's just X-Men now. But X-Men 1.5 and X2, I was doing that concurrently with Dave Parker, the director of The Hills Run Red. And I couldn't decide. I liked X2 a lot, but I really still liked X-Men 1 because of the way it fleshed out the universe. I love the way how it opens, and it follows Rogue and Wolverine, and I like the way the rift was set up between Xavier and Magneto. I thought all of that was really well done, really elegantly done. I was very, very surprised at how well that worked as a longtime X-Men comic fan. So, I agree with you. I'm a huge fan. I think the X-Men franchise is all over the place. But even like, I really don't like The Last Stand very much, because I don't think Magneto's even in character. He's throwing away mutants, calling them his pawns. I don't think he didn't seem to care when Mystique, like, he would have gone to rescue Mystique, just because she was victimized and had her powers removed. I didn't buy that Magneto would be like, good riddance. Let's get her back and get her powers back. But anyway, I had a lot of problems with that film, actually. But even the X-Men films that I don't find to be as successful as others, I still enjoy watching them. Brian did a good job casting those those characters at first, and then I thought the younger cast, I mean, James McAvoy as the young Xavier was inspired. Michael Fassbender as Magneto, inspired. They did a really good job. Those films have a lot to like about them. I have to say, as much as I find Dark Phoenix a disappointment, it's very watchable. It's very watchable. But thanks for writing in, man. HB Haga is here. HB reads. He writes in and says, just watching your Robservations episode 469, and when the discussion turned to Jerry Ryan and the character 7 of 9, I was reminded of Yvonne Craig once again back in the 60s Batman show. Barbara Gordon Batgirl was brought in to shake up the final season of the show and to boost ratings. From some of her panels, Yvonne Craig would often talk about how, yes, her looks were a factor on the show, but that they also leaned heavily on her background in dance. She did a lot of her own stunt work because they couldn't find a stunt woman who could do those high kicks. While it's true that she was put in the role of the damsel in distress frequently on that show, Batgirl did get to be the one making the save a few times as well. Well, HB, that's interesting. I did not know that. Thank you for writing in. Look, there are a few things in life better than Yvonne Craig as Batgirl. She also, of course, starred in a didn't star, but she was in a third season original Star Trek episode called Whom Gods Destroy, playing a green Orion slave woman, Martia. That is the right hand of Lord Goth. So, yes, I'm a big fan. I mean, a redheaded Batgirl that looks like Yvonne Craig, there's nothing wrong there. So, yes, big fan. Interesting, though. I didn't realize that her dance background was what brought her there. HB Haga continues. To move away from film and television for a moment, I'd be interested to know what some of your first literary sci-fi influences were. My initial reading was fairly broad, thanks in part to a family friend who worked for a book distributor. The Swiss Family Robinson, Treasure Island, The Arabian Nights, and Gulliver's Travels were some of my first serious reading, along with a large-form paperback of Conan and The Tower of the Elephant. I didn't get into hard sci-fi until the 6th grade when I started devouring everything I could get my hands on. Niven, Bradbury, Burroughs, Zelazny, Shara, Clark, you name it. What were some of yours? Great question. Well, when I was a kid, a little kid, I loved all kinds of children's books. Like I had all the Dr. Seuss books. I loved a series of books, Frog and Toad are Friends. You know, these are when I was a little kid. And then my father started reading to me the James Blish Star Trek adaptations. I want to say I was in kindergarten. But where I really, and you know, I read a lot of that kind of fiction. But when Star Wars came out, I was in the 4th grade. And the 4th grade, when I was 10, was really when I decided to read. That's when I joined the science fiction book club and started to read all the canonical works of sci-fi. Like, that's when I don't think I read Dune right away, but between the time I was 10 to the time I was 14, I was heavily into reading sci-fi. And I was reading new stuff and older stuff, and I was trying to work my way through canonical science fiction. I read like Isaac Asimov's The Caves of Steel, By Jupiter, the Elijah Bailey books, and then the Foundation trilogy. It was only a trilogy then. The Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. But the thing that set me off, it wasn't just Star Wars. I have them actually right here. These are actually my copies from the 4th grade. Now, this is John Christopher's Tripods trilogy. And this really set me off. The White Mountains, The City of Golden Lead, and The Pool of Fire. And the reason I started reading this is because Mrs. Walton, my 4th grade teacher, started reading The White Mountains. And we would have a half an hour recess after lunch, and then after we came in from recess, it was story time, where she would read the stories to us, which I loved. But it took her so damn long. I mean, she would only read... Hang on, let me put this back. I mean, she would only read for like, you know, if she read for a half an hour, that was like a long time. And I was frustrated how long it was. I was so into the story that I had to go out and get the books myself. And I whipped through them. And it was great because I already knew what was coming, so I could really enjoy when she read to us. But those were the books that really hooked me. I guess they were my Harry Potter. And the 3 books, the trilogy, Actually, there's a fourth book that I've actually never read. To be honest, I'd love to read it. I think it's a prequel, but the Tripods trilogy it takes place in like a future Europe, and there have been these alien invaders that they have 3 legs and they're basically like giant. They look like cones, kind of, and they have come to Earth. They've subjugated the population, and when everybody turns 16, they get what is called capped. They have caps put on them so they can control their behavior. Well, some kids reject this, and they have fake caps put on so they can pass. And it's about these 3 friends that leave their town and go to the White Mountains to find the head of the resistance and fight against these alien invaders that are going to, in very soon, going to kick into high gear their plan to terraform Earth, and eventually everybody's going to be wiped out. But I loved the books, and the thing that really blew my mind is the second book. Our main character ends up going into the alien city, and you're getting a glimpse of the whole alien civilization through his eyes, and I was fascinated by that, and that's what set me off reading. So I hope that is illuminating for you. But yeah, I read stuff like Treasure Island too, and I read some Conan, and I read the Princess of Mars. I read the Barsoom novels, the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, the John Carter stuff, which I really liked. And there was so much great stuff to look at and read and experience, and I would read anything really, but I did love science fiction the most. And it was great to order from the Science Fiction Book Club. I loved like every month getting a book in the mail from them. It was great. HB goes on to say, I'm curious to hear what you think about British sci-fi shows. Doctor Who, of course, is well known these days, but I recall some of the older shows that I only got to see on PBS or later when I got to college. The Omega Factor, Sapphire and Steel, Blake 7, Red Dwarf, UFO, etc. What are some of your favorite sci-fi coming out of the UK? Well, it was right here somewhere. I moved my UFO. I was a huge fan. UFO was the first of the British sci-fi shows that I've seen when I was a kid. I think it was on, like you said, PBS. The first time I saw it. But I loved UFO. I loved Space 1999. I loved The Prisoner. And then later I got to see Doctor Who and Blake 7, which I also loved. Doctor Who was a little tough for me at first. I mean, I started watching Doctor Who during the Tom Baker years. And I to be honest, with British sci-fi, the Jerry Anderson stuff was all filmed in 35mm. But the BBC stuff, it was tough because they would go shoot exteriors outside on film, and then they would shoot interiors on videotape. So it was jarring for me. I didn't quite understand that, but as I got older, I liked those things better. But yeah, I mean, the Omega Factor, I actually have the Omega Factor. There's a Sapphire and Steel's great, Blake 7. I never really got into Red Dwarf. I know, everyone says, Smeg, I get it. I need to sit down, and one day I just need to power through it all. But there was also, lots of one-off, The Persuaders, and then the Jerry Anderson Super Marionette shows I loved. I mean, we didn't get Thunderbirds when I was a kid and Captain Scarlet. I saw those when I was a teenager. I really got into Stingray and Captain Scarlet and Thunderbirds. And then I finally got to see like Supercar and Fireball XL5, but I saw those later. And Joe 90 and the Secret Service and later Terrahawks and stuff like that. But I loved all the Jerry Anderson stuff, and also Space 1999 and UFO. So those are the kind of things that I remember growing up. But that was great stuff. I liked stuff like The Saint too. But those were all good things, very influential. This next one comes from Adam McNichol. Adam McNichol. Yeah, take a swig. Dear Rob, I don't think I've ever written into anything before, whether it be a magazine, TV show, or website, but I'm really interested in what you have to say about aspect ratios. Specifically, whether you can stand TV shows like Picard and Discovery using scope rather than flat for their presentations. Please forgive me if I get the terminology slightly wrong. I'm not a film major. Before anyone gets the idea that I'm one of those crazy no black bar types, know this. I made my mom track down the widescreen editions of Star Trek 1 through 8, the movie box set, on VHS back in 97 or 98 when I was 15, even though I would be watching them in my home on a tiny 14-inch 4x3 TV. I always want to see what the director intended. However, that is in the case of translating a movie so that is viewable on the kind of screens that most of us have in our homes. With a TV show, I feel that by going scope, you are not respecting the medium. Most TVs are 16 by 9, so the TV content should be made to fit the screens we have at home, not the screens the directors or producers are able to watch their show on or wish they were shown on. I always get the feeling that it is a cheap way to appear cinematic or prestigious, but really all it does is rob us of resolution that could have been put to some use. In the grand scheme of things, it's minor, but I can't help feeling that both Picard and Discovery might have been better if those involved respected the fact that they were making a TV show and not a movie. Keep up the good work, and look forward to seeing a rotating display of crazy Japanese laserdiscs behind your head. Best wishes, Adam. Well, it's funny you say that, Adam. This was the first worldwide letterboxed laserdisc of Star Wars, and it was hideously expensive at the time to get. I think it was $150 to get Star Wars because it was a Japanese import. Very expensive. I am a total aspect ratio fanatic, and I noticed when I was a kid, and I don't know why, but this is how I remember it, that Universal movies, whenever something was from Universal, I noticed before I knew what it was, panning and scanning. Now, for those of you, anybody who doesn't know, let's see, what can I use to demonstrate this? Well, for anyone who doesn't know what an aspect ratio is, an aspect ratio is the size of the screen. Now, our former televisions had an aspect ratio of 4:3. So for every unit, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, for every 4 units wide, it was 3 units high. So close to a square. Not quite a perfect square, but close to a square. Now, movies used to basically be that way as well. 1:3:3 to 1 was the Academy ratio. 1:3:3 to 1. Basically a square. Movies were like that for a long time. And then when the advent of television rolled around, what movies did to fight back was they created widescreen aspect ratios. There's a lot of different widescreen aspect ratios. There's VistaVision, there's Toho Scope, there's Panavision. There's many different widescreen aspect ratios, and the desire was to move the film image away from a square to become wider, so much more rectangular. The common aspect ratio that we would know, movies like Star Wars and Indiana Jones or Jaws, anything that was shot, say, in Panavision, was basically 2:3:5 to 1. So for every 2:3:5 units wide it was 1 unit tall, so very rectangular. The problem is, when they were putting those images on TV, they couldn't do it. So you had a 4:3 TV image, so what they would do is they would pan over the image and try and keep the main action in the frame. So when they're showing widescreen movies on TV, you were missing a lot of what was going on. You certainly were missing the composition of the frame because a 2:3:5 to 1 image could not fit in a 4:3 box. It would spill out over on the sides. So they came up with a solution that wasn't perfect, but it was interesting, which was called letterboxing. So they took a 2:3:5 to 1 image, and rather than pan across it, they just reduced the image so the rectangle fit in that square screen, but that would leave black bands on the top and the bottom of the image. And look, there are different aspect ratios. There's 1:6:6, there's 2:1. There's even Super Panavision. Things got even wider, like 255. Like I think Lawrence of Arabia is maybe 255 or something. But they had different aspect ratios. So the problem was when you did that, when you reduced the movies to become letterbox, you did lose resolution because the pixels that were creating that resolution are being reduced. Some of those pixels are being used up by black bars. But there was no other solution. And when Laserdiscs came around, they were really the first place where you could buy letterboxed films. And once I knew what I was looking for, I couldn't watch pan and scan movies anymore. I could only watch letterbox films, which is why I got into Laserdiscs. Almost specifically, that was the reason. I mean, the image was better, the sound was better, but I wanted letterbox films. Hell, I even used to write letters to Criterion about when are they going to put out Blade Runner. Blade Runner was rumored it was going to be one of their first big letterbox releases. And in America, like some of the first letterbox releases we got, Woody Allen's Manhattan. But instead of leaving the bars black, they were gray. The letterboxing bars were gray, which was weird. Steven Spielberg's The Color Purple, while not a widescreen film, was released with black bars on the top and the bottom of the screen. Now, I am a huge fan of the 2:3:5 or now 2:3:9:1 aspect ratio. I love the widescreen aspect ratio. Like John Carpenter almost exclusively shot in that aspect ratio. Spielberg's early films, George Lucas's, they were all using that aspect ratio. To me, I remembered I read an interview with John Carpenter when he said the 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio, the Panavision aspect ratio. He said, "That's movies, man." And I'm like, that is movies. I like that aspect ratio a lot. A lot of the great big action films of the 80s, obviously, like Die Hard, you can't imagine them not in widescreen, and that's what I want. That's what I really, really want. I love that aspect ratio. Now, I have no problem now that we all have wider televisions. I mean, still, if you want to shoot it at 2:3:9 or 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio, there's still bands on the top and bottom of the screen. They're just a little smaller because we have widescreen televisions now. So I don't mind it as much. And I have to say, I part company with you on this issue. I think all TV shows should be shot in the 2:3:5:1 aspect ratio. I mean, I understand you have to respect, I don't disagree that you respect the medium and the increased resolution is always a good thing, but I would much prefer the aspect ratio, the widescreen aspect ratio, just because it looks so much cooler. But I have no idea why they decided to shoot Discovery and Picard the way they did and make it more cinematic, but it's almost the one saving grace. The one thing that keeps me going on that show is I can watch Picard and I can watch Discovery and they're at that 2:3:5:1 or 2:3:9:1. Actually, it's 2048 by 858 in 2K, and it's 4096 by 1716 in 4K. That is the widescreen aspect ratio. So I'm in. Ever since letterboxing began, I can't watch pan and scan images anymore anywhere. I just can't do it. It's so terrible. But Adam, I want to thank you for writing in. What a great first letter. Thanks for please write in more. And I'll swap out the Laserdiscs more often. So it's nice to know people are in fact noticing them. I like that. Herr Weber is here. Herr Weber says, topic, zeitgeist. I've always wondered about films, topics, etc. that seem to be competing with each other at about the same time of year and how that comes about. Back in the very early 80s, 80 to 81, while playing in the nearby woods with my friends, we were into D&D and fantasy films. We would spend hours playing, but more importantly, building stories to practice and shoot on 8mm film. This was very pre-Sword and the Sorcerer or Beastmaster type of fare of the day. We came up with a great storyline, and we called it Wizards and Warriors. Then, weirdly, a few years later, there was a TV show called Wizards and Warriors. We came up in that same period with the modern sci-fi slant on kids with special powers, and then, strangely, 2 years later, the TV show Whiz Kids came out. We also used that same name, and this was also pre the Zapped film with Willie Ames. We all talked about how the stuff we were creating and playing and then filming 2 years later would become the name and subjects on TV and film. It was something we were aware of and spoke of in our tight group, but not with others. I can assure you that we had not seen these titles or subjects in Starlog magazine. This oddness stayed with me, and as I grew older, while other similarities popped up now and again, think much later Armageddon and Deep Impact, there have been a handful of two properties with very similar themes or subjects at the box office in the same year over time. While my youthful stories, which freaked me out ever so slightly, were one thing, I question. Do movies get pitched at one studio or production company and they pass, then behind closed doors saying, we need a insert movie title too, and then have another group work on that in competition? Be that as it may, there are some differences. I find it very odd that a handful of very similar subjects or movies often or not are made and fight at the box office in the same year. For example, The Howling in 1981, The Howling, Wolfen, and American Werewolf in London all came out. In 1989, K9 and Turner and Hooch came out. Both are buddy cop dog films about a police officer who gets a dog for a partner. In 1992, 1492, Conquest of Paradise, and 1992, Christopher Columbus, The Discovery both came out. In 1994, The Air Up There and The Scout both came out. Both films are about a desperate American scout who thinks he found an extraordinary talent in an unlikely foreign locale, but bringing the player to stardom has unthought-of difficulties, and the scout learns life lessons from the player he is supposed to be developing. Dante's Peak in 97 and Volcano in 97. Both are disaster films centered around volcanic eruptions. Kundun in 1997 and 7 Years in Tibet in 1997. Both are fact-based dramas set in the mid-20th century Tibet with the 14th Dalai Lama as a main character. Absolute Power and Murder at 1600 in 1997. Both films center around a Washington, D.C. murder investigation involving the president at the White House. 1998 had Ants and A Bug's Life. Both are computer-animated films about insects starring a nonconformist ant who falls in love with an ant princess, leaves the mound, and eventually returned and is hailed as a hero. Thoughts on this, Mr. Sommelier of Cinema? Thanks. Well, Herr Weber, that's actually a really great question. And also very mysterious. I tend to think of, like, I can speak from my own life. As a pop culture junkie and somebody that reads a lot of different, like I zip around to a bunch of different websites all the time. And I've noticed that over the years, there are certain subjects that get dealt with, like somebody will write an article, and like the Hadrian Collider or something, and somebody will write about, well, what are they doing there? You know, at CERN or whatever. And you'll hear about that. And then there'll be articles about how they're building that new collider, and there'll be news stories about it. And then what's going to happen, people will write op-eds about whether they should have. So this stuff filters through pop culture, and then I'm sure somebody, or not just one person, but then people get the same idea like, ooh, what happens if a dimensional doorway is opened? And they go from there. So I think that there is, because like you said, zeitgeist, there is a lot of parallel development that goes along with movie making just because of what's in the ether. You know, when you're subjected to this idea of a super a collider, like it's CERN, and you hear about it, you might be on two different people that have never met, don't even know each other. They both come up with the same idea at the same time, because the idea of like, okay, well, what would you do with a super collider? There's only a few. There's a few nuggets of story right there that would immediately leap out at you, and I'm sure people. I'm sure there were a lot more than two developed of these ideas, because somebody reads some article and then that happens. So I really think it has more to do. It's not so much pitching to the studios. I think people are basically going in at the same time, pitching the same type of ideas to various studios, and they find the script they like, they hear the story first or whatever, and it just kind of happens that way. I remember there's the age swapping, 13 or 30 or whatever, and there's a lot of that going on at one time, probably because these ideas just happen and the studios jump on them and parallel projects get developed. But I don't think it's because the studios are plundering one another. I really do believe that for the most part it's happening at the same time. Like, an article, somebody reads, well, what happens if a comet, or what happens if a giant meteor is going to hit the Earth? Like, there might be some great story that was in whether it's in National Geographic or something, and then you get Deep Impact and Armageddon. And basically the same movie, but told from different perspectives. But I think you're right. I think that's it's always weird and wacky when that happens. Oh, this is a letter I can read tonight on Elizaviews, and I will. There we go. We have an Elizaviews letter. That's exciting. Very exciting. Omar94 is here. Omar94 says, "Hi, Rob. I don't know why it is, but for some reason there are people in the entertainment industry who will keep the same movie series and or TV shows going even when the quality has declined. For example, in movies, Terminator movies keep getting made. In reality, Terminator movies should have stopped being made after the second one. There was an alternate ending with an old Sarah Connor watching John Connor and his daughter that would have ended the series in a nice way. However, more sequels kept getting made for some reason. That said, though, I'm being a bit ignorant on that since I've only ever seen the first two Terminators and none of the others. Television is like that as well. For example, Matt Groening and Seth MacFarlane have said The Simpsons and Family Guy should have ended years ago, but new seasons keep getting made, causing both shows to decline in quality. I don't know why people in the industry try capitalizing on something for as long as they can and fail. Thanks, live long and prosper." Well, Omar, it's basically because money. Everybody's driven by money, and it's hard to come up with original ideas. So if The Simpsons continue to work and people watch the show and the ratings don't decline, then they'll keep making the shows. And that's it. That's pretty much it. And The Terminator is a known franchise. It's an easy thing to bank on. It's easy to understand. Skydance bought the Terminator rights, and they figured, okay, we've got to milk them and make our movies. The problem is, I think you're right. Ultimately, you have to ask yourself, is there a story to tell? Do we have a story to tell here? I think the Terminator franchise just doesn't have... look, the Sarah Connor Chronicles is a pretty good show. And I think after the Sarah Connor Chronicles, if you're not delving into that mythology the way that show did, you're doing yourself a disservice because, man, it's rough. It is rough. But again, it's people think, I've got a great idea. They bank on it, and they try and make it the best they can, and hopefully they're going to make money. But they'd rather bank on a new Terminator movie than some other franchise no one's ever heard of because Hollywood is risk-averse. Omar94 goes on to say, "Hi, Rob. I'm just curious to know if there's a movie studio intro that always gets you excited about the movie you are about to watch. For me, I always get excited whenever I hear the RKO Pictures intro for classic Hollywood movies. Even though I've seen movies like Bringing Up Baby, the original 1933 King Kong, and 1932's The Most Dangerous Game many times, every time the RKO Pictures intro comes up beforehand with the beeping frequency noise, I like that with the radio tower. I always have this internal huge smile and get excited for what I'm about to watch. I don't know if you and others are like that with either RKO or other movie studio intros. Maybe it's just me. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Dude, 20th Century Fox. The Fox fanfare, and when you have the extended fanfare, the CinemaScope, the widescreen fanfare, where you get the added da-na-na-na, 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 na-na-na-na. I love that too, because that's not always on the Fox fanfare. I love that, and I have blood flow to all those wonderful places when I hear that Fox fanfare. Now that was, of course, because of Star Wars. But after Star Wars, there were so many movies, so many Fox films, all through the late 70s, 80s, 90s. I love the Fox fanfare. I like Universal too, but I never understood why the Universal logo ended. It shows you a big Earth. I always would have. I thought we should reverse that up, do something. I also used to love the United Artists logo that was on movies from the 80s, which I thought was cool with the whoosh and then the little sounds. I love that too. But the Fox logo is what gets me the most. But I do like the RKO logo. It's just that to me the RKO logo, it was just older, and I didn't have that. I didn't have the attachment to it. But I do like that logo. It's really, really cool. And that when you're going to watch an RKO movie, there's probably a good bit of Hollywood history involved, so it's probably going to be a good movie too. Dean Mikatich writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. and the Post-Geek Singularity. Rob, with your knowledge of the film industry, you are maybe able to answer this question. In a recent live stream, Gary from Nerdrotic has mentioned that he has seen Disney's first quarter financial report. He might have stock. The one thing the shareholder gets to see. He has said that Disney's earnings for Disney Plus was not that great, but they did not say how much they made from it until recently. Apparently, Disney only made $150 million. As this is an earnings report, I'm guessing this is what they made total and would state in a different section a breakdown of what that $150 million was profit. Probably none of it was profit. Given that The Mandalorian is rumored to have cost $100 million and there are other shows being made for the streaming service, they did not make a profit so far from Disney Plus. Nope. So, Rob, here's my question. We all know that Netflix has investors putting money into the company so content can be made, but some of the money must be paid back, otherwise what's in it for the investor? Netflix is also buying content like Paramount's Nickelodeon, SpongeBob SquarePants next to be put on their service. Then there's the cost of running the server farms the content is stored on. I'm guessing many more than one of these in each of their markets, America, Europe, Asia, etc. Finally, you have the cost of Netflix as a consumer. They offer 2 membership options, one at £6 or £5.99, which gives you your main account, and one sub-account with full access to their full content, or 11 for $11.99, where you have the same access to content but also comes with 3 sub-accounts and access to content that is in 4K, which all recent TV shows and films are being released in. Even though Netflix has millions of subscribers, they can't be making enough money to pay for everything and still make a profit. So how do they or other streaming services make a profit? Peace and long life, Dean Mikitich. P.S. Rob, when you first called Bryan Singer live on the show, you asked him if he was willing to come on properly instead of... hold on a minute. I have this weird thing when I'm online. The music starts popping up. When you first called Bryan Singer on the show, you asked if he was willing to come on properly instead of through a phone call. Sorry, it popped up again. Instead of through a phone call. Bryan was open to the idea and then asked if we had any questions for him and to fire them in. So if you are interviewing Bryan Singer live or pre-recording it for the 500 show, here are 2 questions. We also know you are a huge Star Trek fan, but how did your cameo in Star Trek Nemesis come about? Were you just visiting the set and they offered it? Or was it something prearranged and the opportunity to do it again happened? Would you? You have worked with some of the biggest names in films and TV. What was the most fun to work with, and who do you still keep in contact with? Well, I am neither going to confirm nor deny that I will be doing a long-form interview with Bryan Singer for the 500th episode. But if I do an interview, if I am doing an interview with Bryan Singer, it would be like my other interviews, pre-recorded, because I do edit them all together. And also, in the case of Bryan, obviously he's had some extra travails to deal with, and in a live, I wouldn't want to put him in the situation to be live and have that to have some unsavory questions being asked. But those are great questions that you asked. So let's just say if I did want to use them, if I was interviewing Bryan, these are good questions to put to him. So thank you for that. Now, to answer your question about streaming services and money, basically that's what you're looking at. You're looking at they make their money, and yes, they have to pay back. They have to pay back. The only money they're making is from their subscriptions. But now here's the thing. If you have a pretty steady subscriber base and there's not a lot of attrition, they know, like let's just say for the sake of argument, I mean Netflix has more, but let's say Netflix has 200 million subscribers worldwide. All right? And let's just say for the sake of argument, let's just call it $10 that they're all paying. So $10, 200 million people, $10, that's $2 billion a month. So $2 billion a month, and that's $24 billion a year. So you're making $24 billion a year. That's what you're taking in. That's a lot of money. Now, is that enough money? First of all, they got to pay back their debtors. They have the people that have loaned the money. They're a debtor. They have to pay back their lenders. So all of that it has to be taken into consideration. But that's how they make their money. Now, Disney Plus, the television business, and I guess streaming, is used to working at a deficit. Like a lot of TV shows don't start to even show much of a profit until 3 or 4 or 5 years in. And that's just the nature of the business because you have a lot of upfront costs, so there's not a lot of profit right away. But for a streaming service making $24 billion a year, I mean, now keep in mind, between the debt they're paying, the amount of money that they're paying for programming, let's say they spend 23, or let's say 22, for sake of argument, $22 billion. That's what it costs them every year to run. So they have $2 billion left as profit, pure profit. I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, think about it. You know, they made $24 billion and they take home $2 billion in profit. And then I guess they pay off out of that. Well, I mean, that's how they're going to make their money. And hopefully they eventually have 1 billion subscribers. Now imagine 1 billion subscribers. If you had 1 billion subscribers worldwide, each paying $10 a month, $10 billion a month, $120 billion a year. Now, eventually, it's not like they're going to be making more programming than they already are. There's only so much programming you can make. There's only so many people out there. So eventually, as they build their subscriber base, their profits are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, like a TV show, if you get to that billion subscriber number, that's pretty lucrative. Now, with Disney Plus, it's new. You know, Disney, one of the problems that Disney Plus has is there's not a whole lot of new content on there to keep people coming back. So they're going to get more and more and more people. They'll get more and more subscribers eventually because, you know, every kid's going to want to grow up watching Disney movies, and Disney Plus is your repository for that. But eventually they'll start to make money. They'll have more subscribers. Instead of 50 million, they'll end up having 100 million and then 200 million and then 300 million, probably, and so on. And we'll see where that winds up. And ultimately that can be a pretty stable business model. Maybe. We'll have to see. I mean, it's all so new, but yeah, I mean, don't expect Disney Plus to make much. I don't think $150 million covered even their programming costs. That was probably all startup money. They're eating their programming costs until they get to the point where they can have more subscribers, and they'll get there. They'll get there as long as they don't mismanage their funds. But, yeah, I mean, all that's correct. People think, I mean, look, unless you have a runaway hit like Joker on a $65 million spend with whatever let's just call it $130 million total if you include marketing. When a movie like that makes $1 billion, you're taking home some serious change. But most movies don't have that margin. And people think that you get a lot richer in Hollywood than you actually do. So that's not to say people don't get rich in Hollywood, because they do. But the kind of money everybody thinks people make is not necessarily how much money is there. There's a lot of money. This is the margins that Hollywood operates in, unless you have a wildly popular zeitgeist hit like Joker, and a lot of movies don't even make their money back. So it's a tough business. It is a really, really tough business. Let's see. You know what? I'll jump over and see what you guys are saying. I don't know what you guys are saying. Let's see what you guys are saying. I don't know. So Bunyan Snipe is here. Bunyan Snipe sends in a tip and says, the last scene of season 1 of The Shadow. Cranston sits in his office, pulls a gun out of his desk drawer, and places the muzzle in his mouth. The Shadow appears and explains to him that he doesn't have to end it all. His hawk-like features morph into those of Cranston, and they sit down together and recap what happened after they served together in the Army Air Corps, and points out the window to the huge yacht in the bay, handing him about a dozen forged passports. Cut to Cranston with a beard and a shaved head. I like this idea a lot. Relaxing on the deck of his yacht, sipping cocktails, then back to Allard posing as Cranston at a press conference, the Shadow's laughter echoing as it fades to black. I know we've been talking about what pulp heroes we would want to see come back. I love this idea. Whatever you're throwing out for the Shadow works for me, man. I'm digging it. Why not do that? I would love to see that. Look, I think doing a modern updating of the Shadow today could be really cool. Really cool. I don't know who would do it, but I think it'd be really great. Willow's here. Willow says, well, this goes back. What Willow's talking about is what we were talking about yesterday. Who do you cast in projects and movies? And I made the point. I said that people are just too good looking nowadays. But Willow said, superheroes should be beautiful. They're kind of our version of Greek gods and heroes. I roll my eyes, though, when they have young people who look like underwear models playing scientists or doctors. Denise Richards is a nuclear physicist? No verisimilitude. You're absolutely right, Willow. You know, like I was talking about the other day, I think that, especially when you watch TV now, whenever you see young people in movies today are way too... Everybody's beautiful, and then you'll have like the one best friend who's either overweight or very ethnic or something to make them stand out and be less pretty. It's like a trope. I can't stand it. And I always go back to it. It's such a funny thing to go back to, but I always think about Jaws 2. To me, Jaws 2 had a bunch of teens, and some of them were very attractive, but for the most part, they were believable. I mean, Keith Gordon was one of them. And Ann Dusenberry, who's supposed to be the hot blonde, she was pretty, but she was excessively pretty. Everybody could have had a shot with her. You know, she wasn't out of anyone's league. And I thought that I used Jaws 2 as an example, as a watershed moment, because it's about teens, instead of cruising in cars, they're cruising on their catamarans. And I've always thought that the makeup of the teenagers in Jaws 2 is a perfect example of how things should be done. But yeah, I mean, I think that our superheroes should look like gods for that very reason. I think you're absolutely right. But yes, casting Denise Richards and then saddling her with the name of Christmas Jones, I mean, yeah, that was not good. Not good at all. Double Crit sends in a tip, 1 of 3. He says, on the John Campea show, you mentioned some interest in a Fast and Furious game. They're actually working on a PS4 Fast and Furious game called Crossroads. Unfortunately, the driving looks bad and the graphics are not only laggy, but look PlayStation 3 level in many ways. Oof. There's a good reason we don't see many of these movie-licensed console games anymore. They used to recoup their low budget off of ignorant audiences who just recognize the brand, but with current development costs, they're no longer worth the effort. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, like with anything else, now you have to put in the time. I'd love to see a badass, like I was saying, a tandem. If you went through all the movies, like a Fast and Furious game that went through all the movies, I would love to do the level from Fast 5 where you have to cooperate, do a co-op mode with another driver, and you both have to carry the vault through the streets as it's smashing through buildings. I mean, I think that would be an awesome level to play. Also, consumers are more savvy than ever when it comes to game quality. In many cases, the parents are gamers themselves or remember the sting of getting bargain bin games as a kid and know better than to spend $60 on obvious trash for their kids. Yeah, I think people are a lot more savvy about all that stuff. Plus, we have the internet. You know, you can watch playthroughs. You can find out about games beforehand. And there's always such scintillating and such respectful commentary about games that just came out, aren't there? But yes, I think you're absolutely right, 100%. And that's clearly why we don't get movie games anymore like that, because yes, games today are much more expensive, and it takes a lot more time to produce them. And who are these companies? No one's going to put out a half-ass game anymore. They just won't. So, like, I agree with you. Martini McFly sends in a tip and says, nothing profound to add, but please post a link to that awesome Cosmo Navy shirt. I know it's not exactly official, but I can't find it anywhere. Well, Martini McFly, let me tell you, this is one of those specials that pops up on Facebook where they give you a limited time. It was just a bunch of Space Battleship Yamato shirts, or Yamato. And I'm like, I look through all of them. I'm like, no, this is the one. My philosophy of getting geeky T-shirts is getting geeky T-shirts that you can get away with wearing because people don't know just how geeky they are, and people such as yourself, it's always fun when they're recognized as to what they really are. Now, I don't like wearing shirts that have like the name of whatever it is on them on the front, so it's obvious. I like it when it's a little bit more obscure. But I found this shirt again. It popped up in my Facebook feed, and they had a bunch of shirts. A Gundam thing popped up the other day too, but I didn't like any of the designs. They were too obvious. But yeah, I'm glad you like it. I just don't know. It was there for like 2 days and then it was gone. So I don't know what to tell you. This is not official. Mark C said, "Are you drinking sake at the proper temperature of 98.4 Fahrenheit?" No, I'm not. This was chilled. So there you go. Although it is almost room temperature now. So Mark C, don't think less of me, please. Because that would make me sad. Stubble McShave sends in a tip and says, "So if Bond will wait with its release until the world's in a better place, then you may get a premiere in London after all. It seems Jim may not be off the hook after all either." I need to call Jim. Please help us, Jim. Jim needs to come back. I need to do what I can to convince him. But yeah, it bums me out. I mean, we can't travel anywhere. I think one of the only countries that's letting American in these days is like, did I say what, Botswana? I don't know what it is. I'm just joking, but something like that. Let's see. Brendan Sheehy sends in a super chat and says, "Rob, your favorite Hitman movie?" Mine is Leon. That's so classic. I have a great Leon action figure too. Honorable mentions go to The Matador. That's a good one with Pierce Brosnan, and Grosse Point Blank. No women, no children. Well, that's an interesting thing. What about Collateral? I'm a big Collateral fan. But, of those, Leon is so good. Leon is such a great, great film. I mean, Hitman movies. If my friend Adrian Iscaria is watching this, I have to say his movies. He produces the Hitman franchise. But and those movies are pretty cool. I don't know if they'd be my favorite Hitman movies, though. I'm trying to think of something even earlier. But I own Leon and Grosse Point Blank. Those films are great. I don't own The Matador though, but I did like it very much. Leon is so good. It's so iconic, and you gotta love the opening of. Although I have to say, Chow Yun Fat, the killer, might be my favorite Hitman movie. Could be. John Woo's The Killer. Ross Gecko sent in a super chat and said, "What are a few of your favorite non-genre movies?" Oh my God, most of my favorite movies are non-genre movies. Some of my favorite movies of all time: The Godfather, All That Jazz, All About Eve, Almost Famous. So those are just the A's. Wings of Desire, although that's kind of a genre movie, I would say. I can't say that it's not. It's totally a genre movie. I mean, there's so many. It's funny because I'd say things like To Live and Die in L.A., but that's a cop thriller. The Verdict is a movie about lawyers. Let's see what else. What else do I love? They're all genre movies. I mean, of some kind. I love The English Patient. I wouldn't call that a genre movie. I love Apocalypse Now. I mean, those are the ones off the top of my head. I love Sunset Boulevard. I love John Frankenheimer's output in the 60s. The Train, The Manchurian Candidate, Seconds, although Seconds is a genre movie. Birdman of Alcatraz. Those are 7 Days in May. I mean, that is a great run of films from a director. Really like that. I like Spielberg's Munich. I think that's a great movie. I mean, I guess I can't say The Seven Samurai or any of Kurosawa's movies. I'd say Akiru, High and Low. Those are Kurosawa movies that aren't necessarily samurai genre films. Amelie is not a genre movie. That's a favorite movie of mine. Yeah, those are just off the top of my head. Things. I mean, I'm looking over at my new wall. It should have been a wall of Hot Toys, really, but it's my physical media wall that I just put together. There's a lot. There's a lot of different kinds of movies. You know, Hitchcock movies are is Hitchcock a genre? Rear Window, Vertigo, I love. Powell and Pressburger, you know, The Red Shoes. Antonioni movies, of course. La Notte, La Ventura, Blow Up. I really like Blow Up. De Palma movies. You know, you think, or I guess Stephen King movies are a genre unto themselves. But Shawshank Redemption, I mean, my favorite Stephen King movies are like Misery, The Shawshank Redemption, De Palma's Carrie. I like Brian Zapp Pupil. You know, but those are, I guess that would be genre. There's, my God, I mean, I have 3,000 movies over there, but no, you know, I don't, my favorite movies are not necessarily genre movies. I love Scorsese movies, you know, Goodfellas. I love Raging Bull. I love all, yeah, Scorsese movies. I love them too. King of Comedy, Age of Innocence, Color of Money. Mark C says, the pan and scan version of Medicine Man is criminally terrible. With great cinematography and one of Goldsmith's greatest scores, it needs a 4K widescreen release. You know, I remember not liking, I mean, Lorraine Bracco, as she's in Medicine Man, seemed a little miscast, but I liked that movie, and I'd like to see it again. And it does. I mean, all movies, I think, should be out in their original aspect ratio. That's what I want. That's what I want out of life. Julius Goodwin sends in a tip and said, when I was younger, I always admired the way James Bond was seemingly master of the women in his life. As I grew older, I realized that this alone proved he was a work of complete fiction. Yeah, well, the thing about, remember, James Bond, all the women in his life, he's just kind of passing by them. He's passing through. You know, unless you go to On Her Majesty's Secret Service when he falls in love, and look what happens to his wife. Look what happens to Tracy in that movie. She gets blown away at the end. So, I guess it depends how you wanted to live your life. But yeah, I think that's important. You know, you can't, but remember, it's not just girls either. It was dudes too. Bond was in and out of people's lives. He was on to the next. He was a man on a mission, literally. So he didn't have time to hang out and get all domestic. Although it was cool when he did, like with Vesper in Casino Royale. But look where that led. Look where that led. Dun dun dun. Bunyan Snipe sends in a tip and says, if you want to get into gaming, maybe get a Post-Geek Singularity crew together and captain a starship, perhaps streaming it on Twitch. Could be a lot of fun. Maybe you could try Star Citizen or Space Engineers. You know what? I would love to play Star Citizen. I should get in on that. I think it'd be so much fun to play. I mean, it's incredible. Star Citizen is incredible. I haven't taken the plunge. I really want to take the plunge. What's the other one? There's another one I've tried to play that it's just so complex. It's a space game. Why am I drawing a blank on it right now? You guys all know what it is. It's the one where they have battles and people lose hundreds of thousands of dollars of real spaceships. Well, they're not real spaceships. They lose their virtual spaceships, but it costs them money in the real world. But Garrett, what is it called? Like they had a big conflagration, like everybody teamed up, and they actually I don't know the name of the game, but I wanted to play that. I tried to play that. It's just too I couldn't jump in. Too much, required too much brain power. Automata sends in a super chat and says, the Sarah Connor Chronicles is worth watching for the two-parter Today is the Day Alone. Cyborg Resistance and Tell John Connor. The answer is no. Those are great episodes, and I think that whole show is pretty great. They did a really good job with the mythology. They had great writers on that show. They had Zach Stentz and Ashley Miller on that show, and they did a great job. Brandon Sheehy sends in another super chat and says, Rob, the British comedy Carry On Columbus also came out in 1992. 3 movies that tried to cash in on the 500th anniversary of Columbus and all failed. That's why. So they all came out. So there was, development. People said, oh, let's do a movie about the 500th anniversary of Columbus, which is why they all got made. Interesting. Yeah, I just don't know if, well, first of all, Columbus has certainly fallen from favor lately, but I just don't know. I liked 1492. I thought it was an interesting movie. It's Ridley Scott, so it's beautiful to look at. But, you know. Mukbang says, what's your favorite thing to cook? Or does Liz handle it? Just being nosy. Love your shows. Elizabeth and her daughter Zoe cook a lot. I don't really cook. But some of my favorite things to cook. You know what I like to do? I'm a grill man. Give me a barbecue. Give me an open flame. I love cooking salmon. I love grilling salmon. I love grilling chicken and meats. Like we buy these. Oh man, it's so good. We buy these. They're marinated tri-tip, and we put them. We don't smoke them, but oh man, they're good. But that's what I like to cook. I like to cook things on the grill. Love to do seafoods. I love to also grill vegetables. You know, I think grilling vegetables. I love grilled vegetables. I just like that charcoal taste. So that's what I do. So we don't do it. We have a great grill, but we don't use it nearly enough lately. We should. But, you know, we haven't had people. Normally we would have our friends over and cook a dinner party, and I was the grill man. And I like being the grill man. So, yeah. Emil Johansson sends in a super chat and says, it's interesting how games can be so different, even if it's about the same thing, like the game version of Batman Begins versus the Arkham series. Oh, I agree. I mean, look, great games need a visionary at the top, just like great movies do. You still need to have somebody a Kojima or somebody who understands who's the mastermind behind what's happening, who understands how it all works. You need that. You know, if a game is if it doesn't have strong leadership at the top, it's not going to be great. Stubble McShave continues on and says, I have solved how they will introduce the X-Men to the MCU. A bunch of guys are dumped by their wives and girlfriends. Out of frustration, they develop superpowers. They are the X-Men. Sorry about the bad joke. That, you should apologize. You should apologize to the entire Post-Geek Singularity for that one. That is not a good joke, Stubble. I'm going to make fun of Wheel of Time for that one. And I will. I'm not kidding. I'm going to make fun of that one. Victor Rosario Fermain? Victor Rosario Fermain is here. I think Fermain. Let's see. Dear Robert, seeing you read my first letter for everyone to hear was a thrill for both my girlfriend Claudia and I. When you said your catchphrase, we park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay, we laughed because we kind of knew that. She says that now you have more titles than Daenerys Targaryen, but she enjoys hearing you recite them all with style. I couldn't do it today for whatever reason. By the way, I just got in the mail Are You in the House Alone by Amanda Reyes. Thanks for the tip. Here goes letter number 2. For those of you who don't know, Victor is referring to Amanda Reyes, who's the wife of a friend of mine, wrote a book on TV movies of the late 60s through the 80s. And that's where we got movies like Bad Ronald and Don't Be Afraid of the Dark and movies like that. The Trilogy of Terror with the Zuni fetish doll. It's a great book. Thanks for the tip. Here goes letter number 2. Building the perfect Fantastic Four movie. The past in print and in cinema. In the beginning, there was Jack and Stan. Jack Kirby was a renowned sci-fi fantasy aficionado of prose, comic strips, and cinema. He was also the creative brainiac behind the Fantastic Four, while Stan Lee took Kirby's then outlandish concepts and made them accessible to his young comic book readers. This is not translated to film yet. The Fantastic Four tally so far reads 1 unreleased movie, 1 box office bomb, and 2 modestly successful films. None of them captured the family dynamic and the spirit of what Stan and Jack did, as well as The Incredibles, a film that paid homage but wasn't really a Fantastic Four adaptation. Source of change. If Marvel's first family accidentally gained their powers from the Ultimate Universe teleporter instead of the 616 spacecraft and cosmic rays, I will not complain much. Just keep Doctor Doom away. Fox shoehorned him in there twice, and it always felt like lazy storytelling. Blinded by science. The Fantastic Four are explorers and science heroes, not super cops. Of course, if they're in a bank during a stick-up, they would do something about it. Spectator. Bring in the Watcher. Uatu is a pivotal part of Fantastic Four lore, and his race was already established in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Rocky. Josh Trank's film may have been a box office Pepe Le Pew, but The Thing looked more awe-inspiring than he ever had before. Yes, his size, body proportions, and face were off, but his craggy skin texture was right on the money. He really needed that signature stone unibrow, though. So I would tell Mr. Feige, Kev, old buddy, hire the same VFX house Fox did and send them the most iconic Kirby illustrations and have them stick to that. Jack kept Ben's overall look consistent, despite drawing his Rocky patterns different from panel to panel. His teammates never noticed, and if they did, they were considerate enough to keep their mouths shut. Yesteryear. Make it a period piece. Peyton Reed has the right idea, but so did Brad Bird when he placed The Incredibles in the early 60s. By setting the Fantastic Four origin in 61, Ben and Reed could be World War II veterans like they originally were in the comics. In Tim Story's films, Reed Richards was a pushover for Victor Von Doom. What a revoltant development that was. The smartest man in any room has to be fantastic way before he can stretch, and becoming a charismatic leader of men in a global war helps. Also, they could pull a Forrest Gump by having Reed and Vic attend an Albert Einstein lecture. The Fantastic Four might later shake hands with MLK, JFK, Muhammad Ali, or even the Fab Four themselves, a.k.a. the Beatles. Embrace diversity. I'm not white, but I never pictured Johnny Storm being anything but Caucasian, so when Michael B. Jordan was cast, I bitched and moaned. Now, I think Josh Trank's idea was not wrong, only the character he chose. Most of the time, Ben Grimm looks like Rocky Horror, but we don't see that. We see the noble, blue-eyed gargoyle, the flying ace, the scrapper, and lately his Jewish ancestry and faith. Did you know that in the 20s and 30s, 16% of all boxing champions were Jewish? Yeah, because they always had to fight to stay alive. I can easily see his grandfather being a former boxer and using clobbering as his nickname, like Mickey in Rocky. Like Mickey in Rocky. Once his contending days are gone, he retires to train talented boys. Youngsters like a black kid from Harlem named Grimm, who later falls in love and marries his daughter. Imagine the many fights the son of a mixed marriage would have to endure then. Picture him flying with the Tuskegee Airmen and after the war using the GI Bill to go to college. By the way, I researched black Jews in New York City. Some have their own synagogues because it seems they're not quite accepted in traditional ones. Michael Ealy is a blue-eyed black actor. I wonder if he can deliver the humor and pathos Stan talked about when he answered why Ben was so much more fun to write and what made him the most popular character of the four. Age difference matters. Fans and pundits love the idea of casting the John Krasinski and Emily Blunt power couple as Reed and Sue. I do. Sorry, I do not. In the Roger Corman, I mean, you don't know. I like that idea, but you don't. Sorry, I do not. In the Roger Corman unreleased Fantastic Four film, Sue and Johnny were the kids of the lady who owned the boarding house where Reed lived during his college days. 10 years later, Reed visits the boarding house and sparks fly when the now adult Susan walks down the stairs. Krasinski is 40. To replicate that magic, you need someone like Lily James or Daisy Ridley, and not Blunt. Make it Lily James, please. Who is only 3 years younger. By the way, Paul Bettany is 18 years older than Elizabeth Olsen, and they look great together. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Elizabeth Olsen. Make Johnny 16 like Danny Zuko. Winning him over will make Reed a father figure and the team a family. Johnny is the key. I think these are all great ideas. You should call Kevin Feige. Before the transformation. Who are they just before the gains, losses, and trauma of their accident? Reed is a rising star in the scientific community, challenging traditional ways of thinking. Ben is an aerospace professional and a ladies' man. He has not dealt well with discrimination in the airline industry. Sue is just past medical school. Her dad was a physician after all, and car designer. In my high school, we had a kid named Omri. He designed sports cars. After college, he was hired in the automotive industry to do just that. Art schools are never known for their jocks, but this scrawny kid with the nerdy glasses blew our mind when he outran the brawniest speedsters in the 100-meter dash at San Juan High School District Field Day. Incredible. Dash. Power and responsibility. Fire and rocks can be deadly. Reed needs to teach restraint, just like the Pars did with Dash and V, for different reasons. When the situation mandated they cut loose, it was a glorious thing to see. Busiek and Ross's Marvels was great because people displayed the whole gamut of emotions when superpowers were used. Filmmakers are taking this for granted, forgetting that regular folks in a superhero movie are us. Intro. Introduce them in someone else's movie. It worked for T'Challa and Carol, and both became billion-dollar films. I totally agree with that. Bad guy. Annihilus, Prince Namor the Submariner, Galactus, Doctor Doom again. Who cares? I just want to see Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny done right. On Ice. It's only a matter of time before the MCU shows the world how to channel Kirby and Lee's Fantastic Four properly, and maybe even John Byrne's revered run, which will hitch a ride too. But COVID-19 has put Kevin Feige's 5-year game plan in the freezer, and the Fantastic Four were not even in it. I'm sure Mr. Feige and the Musketeers Victoria Alonso and Louis D'Esposito, we should mention them more often, have not been idle, and for all we know, they might have been cracking the code of the best way to liberate Reed, Sue, Ben, Johnny, and Vic from the quantum realm, the negative zone, or the now expired Fox development hell. Only time will tell. I apologize for the length of this letter, but I hope your audience loves the Fantastic Four as much as you and I. Man, and you really love the Fantastic Four. This is a great letter. I pretty much agree with everything you said, all your sentiments, and the fact that you want to make it the the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby Fantastic Four, but also include this seminal John Byrne run. Genius, in my mind. That's from Victor Rosario from Maine. Thank you for writing in again. That was great. I hope I didn't butcher your name too much. I probably did, and I do apologize for that. Desmond Harris is here. Hi, Toy Man. Once again, thanks for your patience and openness to discuss different issues. Always. This letter is to add to your bounty hunter response to Calvin and Braxton's Star Wars bounty hunter question on a previous episode. I agree with your response, Toy Man, that Boba would likely have to kill Vader, as the rule tends to be no payment or double cross means death, especially to keep a solid reputation in their occupation, so don't try it with them. Boba Fett, the bounty hunters, tend to be backed or supported by the Bounty Hunters Guild. The Guild has a strong organization that handles hunter contracts, business affairs on hunters' behalf, and their profits. It's not good business to mess or screw over an organization that does consistent quality work for the Empire, criminal organizations, corporations, private contracts, especially if their members are vast in connection and influence, no matter the side. Politicians, mobsters, information brokers, technology suppliers, and more. Vader is no dummy to screw over reliable assets that do good work on things he doesn't have to deal with directly, as they are likely to cover sectors of space the Empire would not be able to get to directly or covertly due to treaties and more. If you want more details, get a hold of the book, The Bounty Hunter Code. It covers details on weaponry, tool leasing from the Guild, hunter contracts, hunter training, different guild sects and specialize in different hunts, specialized membership through heritage, species, or gender, the codes between hunters on how they deal with challenges like insurance, space border treaties, and even more details like accidental pedestrian killings whilst on a job and more. Kind regards, Desmond. That sounds awesome. I haven't read that. That's great. I love that they have it that thought out. But you're right. That's what I said. I'm like, Darth Vader is not going to run up against the Guild. Why would you? I mean, Vader still wants to, even though he's ruthless and he killed younglings and did all kinds of horrible shit. He still wants to maintain, he's got to work with people outside of his sphere. He can't choke everyone to death, certainly not outside contractors. And look, I think Vader had a long, fruitful relationship. That's how he was able to get bounty hunters onto his Star Destroyer and the Empire Strikes Back so quickly. When Vader calls, those people must run to see where they wind up. Let's see. Where is... Joseph says... Oh, hi, Rob. Rob, when in God's name will you start watching Stargate SG-1? You're missing out. And knowing your taste, I know you'll love it. I envy you. 10 seasons and 2 TV movies of space goodness. Well, Joseph, everyone is always getting me to watch Stargate, and I'm going to do it. I promise. We'll go on a journey together. It'll be fun. We'll do it. Mukbong sends in a review again and says, your new mods are doing great. Just FYI, Greg is still my favorite, and I miss Jim's humor. I miss Jim's humor, too. I miss Jim and Heidi. Maybe Jim and Heidi will come back. The channel is a lesser place without Jim Boyers. I mean, he was a detective, for real. I'm glad the mods are doing great. It's good to have them. Thank you, mods. I mean, one of the great things about this channel is that we do have a good moderating stuff. Ooh, I noticed Mike Bodden is here. We have the actual mayor of an American city in this chat. We don't know how lucky we all are. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Ian Samuels sends in a second letter today. Between Ian Samuels and Omar, man, wow. Rob and fellow Robservationists. Many series in the UK have just 6 episodes in a season, but some US series have more than 20 episodes per season, which is better, or is the best number somewhere in between. Red Dwarf had seasons made up of 6 episodes, each with a concise story. Broadchurch, which I love, a successful UK crime drama, had 8 episodes per season. Whitechapel had 3 long episodes for seasons 1 and 2, but had 6 shorter episodes in seasons 3 and 4. But in the US, many series have more than 20 episodes per season, and to stretch it out to that many have maybe 6 episodes with decent stories, and the rest are just filler. So is the American habit of having this many episodes per season too much, or are filler episodes just a sign of lazy writing? As an example of pretty much perfect storytelling in a series, the truly excellent Hannibal, well, the first 2 seasons anyway, each season were just 10 episodes, each telling their own story as well as continuing the series plot. So 6 is not enough and 20 or more is just too many? Did Hannibal find the sweet spot in the middle with 10 episodes? Your thoughts, Ian? Yes, as most people know, American TV shows used to have much longer, like Star Trek. The original Star Trek had sometimes even up to 30 episodes in the 3 seasons. Then by the time we got to Next Generation, it was 26 episodes a season. I think it just comes down to storytelling. You know, I really do. That was the norm of the day at the time. And now things have changed. What I like about British shows is they have one story to tell. And if it has to be 4 episodes, it will be. If 6 episodes, it will be. 8 episodes, whatever. Like, I love Broadchurch. And I think now that paradigm has shifted because American shows and a lot of streaming shows are 10 episodes. Some are 13. But it's cut down. I think it's more manageable. And now we're watching more bingeable TV shows. They're usually one story stretched out of the course of a season. I love Hannibal. I'm a huge fan. I think season 3, though, is just as comparable as the others. There's just more of their adaptation of Red Dragon in it. But your mileage may vary. Well, ladies and gentlemen, kind sirs, wow. Julius Goodwin sends in another tip and says, do you have any favorite or memorable names for Bond girls? The ones that stick out to me are Dr. Holly Goodhead, Pussy Galore, and Chew Me. I mean, in terms of Bond girls, Triple X. I mean, even when I was a kid, I'm like, really? Your name's Triple X? Boom, chicka, boom, bow. I mean, I love Barbara Bach. I think she was amazing. I do like Vesper Lind. I mean, I know it's not. I love Octopussy. I mean, who doesn't? It's a little on the nose. It's a little didactic as far as Bond goes, but why not? Dr. Goodhead's good. Mary Goodnight, another good one. Yeah, I'm a fan. Kissy Suzuki. I mean, it's never ending. Never ending. But those are off the top of my head. Fortunato says, hi, Rob. Great job on the Prisoner podcast. Looking forward to your insights. Well, thank you, Fortunato. Az and I, for those of you who don't know, Az and I are doing a podcast about The Prisoner. We're going to do 17 of them. I'm going to host them over here, and he's going to host them over there. And we'll be talking each episode. We're going to be doing an analysis of each individual episode per show. So the first episode up is Arrival, which we're going to do in a week and a half. So join us for that. Thank you very much. I appreciate that you like the show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls from across the 28 known galaxies, I'm bringing an end to Robservations episode number 470. My God. Oh, my God. Elizabeth and I will be back for Elizaviews whining about movies tonight with Spike Jonze' romantic fantasy Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson as the voice of the AI. So join us for that. Should be a blast. So yeah, that's cool. So join us for that at 7 o'clock right here. Same bat time, 7 o'clock, same bat channel. I do want to thank, Jose Gonzalez sends in a chat and says, just getting out of the hospital due to a CAT scan and watching your show to relax a bit. Well, Jose, I hope all is well. I hope you're relaxing. I hope you feel better. Hopefully the CAT scan, only good things come back from that. So thanks for watching. I hope we soothed your day. I want to thank all of the moderators, of course. the moderators here, beginning with Mike Bodden and Greg Smith. And then, of course, we have the Richard is here. I don't know how many other of our let me just see. Let me thank Robert Priso. Thank you, Robert. I don't know if anyone else is here. Is Haynock here? I don't know. Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. I don't. Oh, yeah, there's Haynock. Wow, it's a moderator-heavy chat today. I want to thank them all for doing such a wonderful job. I want to thank you guys for supporting this channel through tips and super chats and all that. But I also, look, I want to thank everybody for writing letters, too. You can send me letters. You can send me videos. Go to the Burnettwork.net website and send them to me there. We're trying to get all your letters up. It's I know we're behind by a number of months, but give us time. We'll get it all up there. There's so much content on the website now. It's pretty cool. But if you want to send me a letter to read on the show, please do so at theburnettwork.net. You can also send me a video if you so desire. We are 30 episodes away from the 500th episode of Robservations, the show about something. If you want to send me, one of the great things about our 400th show was how many videos I was sent by people. So think about it. You've got a month. Mid-August will be the time. I haven't picked the actual day yet, but we're less than 30 days away, aren't we? Because today's the 17th, right? Oh man, got to get on these interviews, son. But yeah, so anyway, pretty exciting times. I want to thank you all for being here. Once again, my name is Robert Meyer Burnett, and remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. And with that, well, at least until 7 o'clock tonight, where we bring you Whining About Movies, episode 54, Spike Jonze, Her. Every person you meet, I already said that. What I was going to say was, have a better day. But have a better day until 7 o'clock when you can come back. And if it's anything as scintillating as last night's show, boy, Elizabeth really didn't like David Cronenberg's Crash. Maybe we'll put a smile on her face tonight. She was cross. What are you going to do? Anyway, Robservations, the show about something, episode 470, is signing off on this lovely Friday. Stay safe and wear a mask.